right, well, here's a few news stories that caught my eye. So, OpenAI has developed a voice cloning model that can clone your voice after only a 15-second sample. I saw some people freaking out saying this will be used for evil purposes, so they haven't announced it publicly. They're going to somehow limit who gets access to it to try to limit what purpose it's put to, but it certainly is a technical accomplishment. NOAA is the government agency that handles the atmosphere and weather, and they're pointing out that there is a rule which is just sort of toothless, having to do with geoengineering. And they say this is going to happen as people begin having weather modification. Now, we used to have weather modification on a small scale, like people would seed clouds to make it rain, and they're expecting people are going to start offering to put junk up in the air to cool off your city and such. And nobody knows what the consequences of that will be. A lot of people think we're going to need to do this, but they say instead of having a regulation where anybody can just do it from a private company on a small scale without any regulation, there ought to be rules and limits so they don't make things worse, which might be true. I've wondered about this. Encoder and decoder large language models, these are what makes things like ChatGPT, and I didn't really understand exactly how they work. And I was pleased to get a pretty good explanation of them here. So you input the text, you break it into tokens, where a token is approximately a word, but it's actually a meaningful unit, which might be a little bit different than a word. Not sure about the embedding, but then you go to an attention model. You try to pick out the important words, the way humans do with attention. Then you normalize the output of that layer. We talk about this a lot in the AI class. And then you go to a fully connected network and normalize, and then you have 6 layers like that. So you have 6 layers of AI learning, and then that's the encoder that takes the input and goes through all this processing to encode it, and then the decoder is what I think predicts the future from it. So you feed in the tokenized text, and then you add it here to combine the two together. Anyway, it helped me a little bit understand it. I still only understand it in the vaguest of terms, but I'm getting there, understanding how these large language models work. They're easy enough to set up and code in the sense that you can just call the right Python libraries and they'll run for you, but exactly what they're doing under the hood is still a bit of a mystery. Now, as I'm sure everybody knows, the United States is very hostile with China now. They're very concerned that we have to block China's access to high technology, and as part of that, they blocked using Huawei technology here in America because they're afraid we would end up with a telephone and internet infrastructure all full of Chinese equipment, which might be under the control of the Chinese government. And after we blocked Huawei, their profit has more than doubled in 2023, so we do not appear to have impaired their business function at all. They're selling very good stuff to the rest of the world, making a pile of money. So, like I say, our efforts to be tough on China have been a very debatable consequence. Like, I've heard the effect of all the Trump tariffs, and now he wants a 100% tariff on cars coming from China, have been to basically increase inflation and make Americans pay more because they can't get cheap Chinese products. So we'll see. Both of our nations have decided to engage in cutting each other off and becoming self-sufficient instead of depending on each other, which has its good side, but if we end up at a war, that'll be a really sad ending of this current era. This was pretty amazing. XZ is a decompressor like 7-Zip. It's included in some Linux distributions, and it apparently had a deliberate secret backdoor in it. CVSS score of 10, you almost never see that, the maximum severity vulnerability. It's a supply chain compromise, and it has impacted various versions. Looks like just the last couple of months, 5.6.0 and 5.6.1, in February and March of this year. Therefore, almost no Linux distributions are actually going to have it yet, which is good. They caught it before it really became too popular. And they found it builds a pre-built object from a disguised file in the source code, which puts a backdoor in it so other people can control your machine. So the repository on GitHub has been disabled, so nobody can download it anymore. And the only Linux distributions affected were Fedora and Fedora Rawhide, and not Red Hat Enterprise, Debian, Stable, Amazon, or SUSE. So I think only people that were on the very cutting edge using the very latest versions of Fedora will have been hurt, and there probably aren't too many of them, and probably no businesses were that. They were probably using the other distributions. So anyway, it's pretty amazing. And so they found the code, and this raises up the issue of supply chain security. How do you know that the libraries you're using have not been made malicious? And I'm afraid this is currently an unanswered question. And it is a real concern, and it applies to proprietary software as well as open source software. Let me just take a look and see if this needs a kick. Installation failed. Right. Well, that's going to be a delay later. Right. So the American government has decided that they like the Palestinian Authority, ruled by Abbas, Mohammed Mustafa. And so they want them to take over Gaza, but they are not popular at all among the Palestinians. I heard a news article that said there is another guy currently in prison who the Palestinians really like, who'd make a much better leader, but we seem to be doing the same thing we've done everywhere in my lifetime, pushing some guy to be like a dictator over a country who is not supported by the actual citizens of the country, so they will hate us more and eventually kick that guy out. America does this all the time. It never seems to work out very well, but we've been doing it for my whole life. It looks like we're poised to do it again. However, Israel has a say in this, but it's not very clear what they want at all. They don't seem to have any end game at all in what they're doing. So, Lord knows what's going to come of this mess. So Congress has banned use of Microsoft's AI Copilot because they are concerned about the data passing through to leaking out of their businesses, leaking out of the congressional offices and such. There's a lot of people worried about this, and so what they want to do, they've already blocked ChatGPT, and what they're waiting for, they don't want to use the free version of any of these things. They're waiting for the enterprise-class secure version of it, which is supposedly coming. Copilot will be blocked. It's a cybersecurity risk due to the threat of leaking house data to non-approved cloud services. And so there is a roadmap to making tools that meet federal government security and compliance standards that should come out later this year. So it's quite understandable, and people I consult for are making similar decisions. You can make something and offer it to the public at large, and people will get interested, but you can't really use it in regulated businesses until it meets compliance standards. So they need the enterprise version. So this is, people want to make hypersonic drones. And in order for hypersonic drones to work, instead of just having a normal engine where you have like chemical reaction and hot gas coming out the back, you are going to have a series of explosions, rotating detonation. So you have something like little pellets and you set them off like bombs in a rotating sequence to get a sort of steady amount of thrust. And apparently this is how you make it to supersonic speeds. So they made a test of it and say it's working. So that's going to be the coming thing. And supersonic drones sound like a pretty good idea. There's a supposedly easy root exploit for all Linux kernels. And this one does affect Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat, Fedora, and so on. So this would be a fun thing to play with. It would make a fun project. I don't think I got time to add it to my classes this semester, but it would be interesting to see. It's a double free bug in the NetFilter component. All right. And these guys claim that they're going to do automated pen testing, where you don't need to pay for pen testers. You can just run an AI tool which will perform a pen test on your network and I guess create the report. I'm extremely skeptical of this. But they make the product and they're trying to say it's a great idea. We'll see. I think pen testing requires an awful lot of human judgment and human interpretation, especially in writing the report. Now, what we already have is vulnerability scanners that make some kind of automatically generated report. And you can add AI to those, and they might get a little smarter, but that's not at all the same thing as a pen test. We'll see what comes of this. All right, that's enough news. I'm going to stop